Welcome to the Great Distraction.
What's up, everyone? This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is microchips in humans. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-host Thomas.
Hey.
Glenn.
Howdy.
And we have a special guest today, Matt.
Yo!
If this is your first time listening, welcome. We thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, something to ponder. So right off the bat, Matt is joining us for the first time today. He's been a very good friend of mine for a long time, and we've had a lot of inspired conversations over the years.
Yes, very many.
Both under and not under the influence of certain substances. And I thought, well, you know what? We actually had a day. Rick was unavailable for this recording, so we thought, okay, well, we'll try Matt out and try somebody new and fill the empty seat for the day, and we'll see how it goes. So our topic. Little history first, because I like to start off with that kind of stuff. Microchips, RFIDs is the same thing. RFID tags, whatever. RFID tags are usually more associated with things like price tags in stores or whatever. So
your credit card.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So those chips in your credit card, that kind of stuff. But anyway, microchips, RFID tags. That term seems to be used kind of interchangeably with respect to implants in humans. But essentially, that is what we're discussing here: is implants in humans. Little history. Go ahead.
Creepy.
Maybe. I don't know. Let's get into it a little bit, because it does sound creepy at first, but then when you think about it a little more, we'll apply a little more logic to it. I think I think it eliminates some of the creepiness that is there once you understand better what it is you're dealing with here. Little history. The first experiments started and were done in I didn't start then. They were first done in 1998 by a British scientist. That was the first implant, and he left it in for 9 days. It was removed after that, and not because he had complications, but that was part of the test, and is now in a museum. And during that time, he tested it with basically the obvious stuff, and pretty much, for lack of a better set of options for it, it's kind of like what the same thing they're still using them for now where they're implemented today. Things like opening the doors or unlocking locks or turning lights on when you walk in a room, or kind of like home automation stuff. And that was pretty much what all the first testing was done with. Obviously, they've expanded a lot from there, but that was kind of what they started just for proof of concept. One of the obvious first questions is, how are they implanted? And that was one of the first things I thought of, is how do they get these things inside of you, right?
Ouch!
Yeah. There isn't a way that isn't painful. Usually it's just a local anesthetic that they use. You can get a shot, just like if you're going to the dentist or something. But they are pretty much all done under local anesthetic. They either use an implantation tool, which looks like kind of like an IV almost, but like a large hollow needle, and they just stick it in your skin and push the implant in. They're very, very tiny. I did not actually get size. I should have done that. I should have looked up sizes. But to me, they look like maybe a millimeter and a half. I mean, they're not, maybe 2 millimeters at most. They're not very big.
Like a fat piece of rice.
Yeah, and then maybe 5 rices together long. I mean, they're very tiny, maybe a half-inch long, something like that. I don't know. They're not very big. The other method that I saw was used often was a small incision, and then they just kind of put it under the skin and stitch it from there. And then I don't even know if they have to stitch it every time, but sometimes it looked like they were just using butterfly bandages or whatever, or those Band-Aid things, or actual couple stitches or whatnot. So that's how they get in. I mean, just kind of what you
subepidermal injection.
It's probably what you assumed, but nevertheless, that is how it goes down. Just to confirm that for you. Okay, so what are they used for? Thus far, I kind of broke this into 2 categories, because it did seem to be that there were 2 main groups of people using these things. And the first one is hobbyists or enthusiast companies, and then the other one is commercial companies, and more for commercial applications. The hobbyist ones, we already mentioned some of them: unlocking doors, unlocking your car, unlocking your home, anything that you would need to prove it's you, and kind of almost along the lines of anything that you would now use like a fingerprint scanner for, or maybe if you have like a badge at work that you badge into places like that. Well, instead of doing those things, you would just wave your hand in front of it because the implant is, that's something I should have, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. They are typically implanted in your left or right hand between, in like kind of like above the webbing between your index finger and thumb, or I guess the other most common spot, which I guess is becoming more common than the up above in your hand, is actually on your arm, kind of like not your bicep, your tricep, in between your shoulder and your elbow. So somewhere in the back of your arm, and that fat we've got sitting there, I guess, is a good place to hold it. So so that was the other. I forgot to mention that earlier. That's typically where these things are being implanted. So if they're there, the range on it really varies on what the sensor technology is and how much power that has. So
the size of the implant.
And the size of the implant. Yeah, it could be. As obviously as technology gets better too, it's going to get better and better. But it could be so close or near field that you'd have to like wave your back of your arm near this sensor pad to unlock the door. But as it gets better, I mean, you'll just walk near.
That sounds convenient.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay.
Spin around in a circle, dummy.
Well,
I mean, door open.
But if you're used to carrying a badge or something, you still have to pull that. I mean, every single day, every door I go through in my work, I have to pull the badge out of my pocket, put it to the door, put it back in. Every door I go through. And sometimes I'll just leave it in my back pocket and I'll turn my whole butt around and put it towards the door and press the opener or whatever. And that's that. So I'm already doing that. And so are a lot of us, right?
Yes.
It's like a normal thing if you work in an office environment. You got to like unlock doors this way. So instead of doing that, you just wave your arm or wave your hand or whatever. There are quite a bit of implementations for doing things like logging into your computer, logging into your phone. What are those? Oh, geez, I can't believe. Like if you have like a remote VPN and it's got that little coin, or not a coin. It randomly generates a code that you type in every time to authenticate yourself. I can't remember what they're called now.
Authenticators?
It is an authenticator, yes, but it has a name that every time you. So if you're remotely logging in to work, let's say, and you're on your computer and you're going to VPN into your work back into the network at work, and it pops up an authenticator, and this thing generates a key code, and every time to prove that that's you, and you have to carry the fob with you. And I can't remember what the hell they're
I don't know. I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it.
I've had them for years, and I can't remember what it slipped my mind. But anyway, you could potentially have a little USB thumb drive looking thing that's plugged into your computer, and you could wave your hand in front of or your arm in front of this sensor that reads that. They do have them also that are you plug a little USB looking thumb drive into your computer, and it's a fingerprint scanner, so you can scan your finger and authenticate into your network that way. So that kind of stuff they are being used for.
It's important to note that this is not necessarily a future of technology we're talking about. Like something like this is what's going to happen. This is the horizon that we're approaching. These products are already in use.
This stuff is already happening.
And obviously in the commercial industries where it's going to be the biggest because it's going to have the most users initially assigned to it.
Yeah.
But you say the word hobbyist. I think of the word like consumer instead of hobbyist, because there's a commercial application and then the consumer application is things that you want to use it for.
So the reason I coined that term was because these particular some of these applications have branched off into the commercial company usage already. Mm-hmm. But these companies that I found that were doing this were very much like hobbyist startup in the garage. It's almost like these guys are enthusiasts or advanced hobbyists that are like, I'm going to make a company out of this.
Yeah.
And when we get to the gun control one, that was the one I wanted to. That guy, they actually showed. I saw video of them going to his house and meeting him. It is literally in his garage.
Yeah, the smart gun guy.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of that's why I kind of wanted. That's why I gave the term the advanced hobbyist or enthusiast, because these aren't like mainstream companies that are selling you anything yet. They're all like still very much in their infancy that I found. Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of experience working with RFID. I worked with a gentleman named Barry Prince, and many, many years ago, I'm not sure where it ended up. I can only speculate, but through RFID technology, he was using that as almost an inventory control purpose, mm-hmm. and a lot of it was for big companies like Cisco and like Facebook's or Yahoo's, big places with a lot of data. They have a lot of big data centers, and they're constantly needing to migrate systems from one end to another end. And so he RFID'd everything in their data centers and had like basically like a Christmas train, if you would, just traveling around the data center. And so it ID'd where every piece of equipment was and what equipment was in that. And that was a start to that. But as you mentioned, swiping your badge, I swipe my badge to get into controlled environments at my work. Some companies went away from the badge to the bracelet, which is more
Yeah.
just like a bracelet that you're allowed to walk through, and it transmits so you don't have to provide a big motion
Yeah.
to attract the reader to let you know that I'm here.
Basically, if you're grabbing the door handle, it's close enough.
It's close enough, exactly. And I think the chipset being, everything in technology has always started out large and gotten smaller and faster and better and more efficient.
Yep.
And that's the same way the chips are going to go. They're going to get smaller, more efficiently read, more efficiently broadcasted, and you won't even notice them.
Absolutely. So, okay, digital business cards. That was another one I saw. People will literally save their data in the implant itself, and able to transmit that to the readers or to your phone or smartphone or whatever, and then there's your business card. So you shake somebody's hand essentially, and you now have their business card on your phone, which we can kind of do now with Bluetooth or AirDrop if you're an Apple person. I'm not sure what the Android equivalent is, but I'm sure there is something along those lines, right? Before I continue here, sorry guys if you can hear the rain. We're for those that don't know, we record in a nice, huge tin shed warehouse, and when it rains, it's a metal roof, and you can hear everything. We recorded a couple episodes not too long ago in the rain, and I listened to it over again afterwards, and I was like, oh, man, you could totally hear that, and there's just nothing we can do about it. So hopefully it's not too distracting, and hopefully it's not too loud on your end.
We're just adding an ambiance.
Hey, yeah, there you go. It's the gentle little ticks back there as a lull
Please
to
don't
sleep.
fall asleep.
Yeah,
We can add thunder in there if you like.
yeah.
You got the tinfoil sheet?
Yeah, those things are cool. I love playing with them.
I know you love playing with it, Ben.
Yes, I know. Yes. I thought right after I said that, damn it. NFC support is something that's being tested right now. And for those who don't know, NFC, okay, this maybe you'll know, Matt. NFC is the option that Android went with, right? Because Apple has their own proprietary short-range RF stuff for their. Okay, so if you have an Apple iPhone, you have access to, unless you have a really old one, Apple Pay. And Apple Pay, or if you have an Android phone, you have most of the Android phones now, I think, have an NFC chip in them. And this is what we use, I think it's Android Wallet or something, Android Pay, or anyway. This is how you're able to use your phone to act as your credit card or your ATM card or whatever, to pay for things at, point-of-sale systems that support that. Well, that same technology can and is being implemented into implants. So you can, instead of using your phone, you can just wave your hand in front of the ATM machine or whatever and pay for your pizza. And I don't know if how many people out there are using it, but I use my Apple Pay pretty much anywhere I see it accepted because my phone's always in my hand anyway, and I don't have to reach in my wallet. I just hold it in front of it, scan my finger, and there you go. I just paid.
The one time I used Apple Pay, I was so excited because I've had it for such a long time.
Yeah.
And I never, just decided to use the technology. I either pay at the pump or go inside if I'm getting something.
Yeah.
I go to the gas station. I'm filling up this big, huge soda. I got all this stuff in my hand, and I walk up to the register after I've already been slurping this thing in line.
You forgot your wallet.
And I'm like, oh shit, my wallet.
That's the same thing that happened to me my first time
like,
too.
Damn it! And I'm like, oh, you guys have Apple Pay, and I'm like, bing, and I was so impressed with myself. I was like, I'm gonna use this from now on, and I haven't used it since.
Yeah, yeah. That was how it was for me. And now I've been finding places to use it because more and more like Target just got added, and there's a couple other big companies that just got added.
Yeah, even credit cards now are almost like trying to stay so relevant in their intrinsic form.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we'll just build it into our credit card. You can just slap your credit card now instead of swiping it.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
right.
There's the push the chip. There's all your stuff. There's also like the RFID portion that's pushing technology.
Some of them have it, yeah. My bank hasn't done that. It hasn't switched over to that yet, but I saw that was coming. Then there's some more specialized products that are coming out of the hobbyist enthusiast companies. And I had already mentioned one of them that I thought was pretty crazy, the enabling of firing a gun. And I don't want to get too far into gun control and this kind of stuff because it opens up a huge can of worms. But there's a guy, I can't remember the name of his company now, but it doesn't matter because some of the big companies, I think Smith & Wesson and another one of the big companies have both shown prototypes of these. It's a Beretta. Have both shown prototypes of this type of technology implemented into firearms. And essentially, it's kind of what you'd imagine. If you've got the implant, the trigger will unlock and you can pull the trigger. It also does mean that there is a battery and electronics running in your gun. So he was saying that the interview I was listening to with the one guy, I can't remember his name now, or his company name, but anyway, he was saying you can actually put it in two types of fail-safe. If that battery dies, it'll automatically unlock, so it's just unlocked for all users. Or if it dies, it'll just stay locked. So you can actually set it, this way or that way. But yeah, I mean, the concept is still there that if this thing dies or you don't have the chip, you don't fire the gun. So I mean, there's safety positives and negatives to it. But anyway, it is something that's being experimented with, and I don't know that we'll actually see any consumer available options because, well, first of all, we don't even have enough people implanted to worry to be using that. Second of all, the other thing too, they were also saying, that guy was saying that some of the implementations that they had been considering were actually, like you had said, the bracelet. Mm-hmm. So, he or she who wears bracelet can shoot gun. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I mean, just take their bracelet, or if they lose their bracelet, now, I mean, how safe really is that? I mean, like, okay.
Any technology is hackable, regardless if it's analog or digital, right?
Sure.
You can only open this door with your eyeball, super spy, and then super spy number 2 comes in and cuts your eyeball out and opens the door. I mean, there's always
or hacks into the system and fakes it or something. Yeah,
there's always a plus or a positive.
True. Another one that's a little more applicable to this day and age, especially with the recent boom, is the storing of cryptocurrency information. There was a couple of big players that stored their Bitcoin ID or whatever.
Sore subject for me.
You and a lot of people, man. Who store their cryptocurrency information on there. So that can totally be an option. Let's get into the commercial company applications that I was seeing. The big one that came up everywhere was medical records being stored or attached to a serial number that's on the device, on the implant, and then therefore you can have your history looked up. Should you get picked up by an ambulance or anybody who can read those things, any medical entity that can read those ID tag, the implant in you, and pull up your records that way. One of the examples I thought of when I heard about that was, well, first of all, I mean, don't we all carry insurance cards and don't they do that for us and whatever? But a real problem that does happen is mentally ill people that get out, escape their facilities, escape their homes.
Your grandparents with their Alzheimer's.
They don't know where they are. They don't know what the hell's going on or how they got there. And if they're, I mean, now it's going to sound terrible to say, but it doesn't matter. There's still a truth to it. Just like when your dog gets out or your cat gets out and it's tagged, somebody can scan the tag and find out who the hell you belong to or where you should be and save you from yourself. It's along the same line. So when you're mentally ill or mentally sick or some sort of degenerative brain situation or illness or whatever, I mean, those people who are tagged can be found and sent home. So anyway, that's one of the I saw what I thought was one of the strong points for the medical record implantation purposes. We already mentioned building access and security within buildings for your and security access to data or whatever, securing access to data when for your job or I guess maybe if you own your own company and you've got some very sensitive data too. I mean, you can implement that too, and there are commercial companies that are definitely are pushing for that. And then kind of a weirder one, and this is one of the first ones that I had heard about as far as a commercial application. There's been a number of clubs, nightclubs, and bars that have promoted implants to allow access to special VIP high-end rooms and or just to make purchases at their establishment. I don't know how well that's fared, but
I don't know. One of the things I saw when I was kind of randomly looking through some videos was there's a company in Milwaukee and then there was one somewhere in Switzerland where the entire companies were, instead of having the cards or the bracelets or whatever, they were doing the implant. And it wasn't necessarily mandatory for their employees, but it kind of felt like it was. But they were, it's like we were talking before, entrance into doors, buying at the, the snack bar or whatever.
Your time cards,
everything is sort of based off of that. And I can see that. And I guess in the tech world or the techie world, this is one of those things that could make the jump really quickly because so many people think it's fascinating and interesting. But I feel like at the end of the day, this is going to be a really heated battle because you're suggesting to people that everyone should have this implanted. Well, what if you don't necessarily believe that? And if you worked at one of these places, the first question I had was like, okay, you work there and you say, well, I don't want that. Well, what kind of backlash do you get?
Well, funny you should
company?
mention that because if you happen to be in one of these 3 states, and I thought this was very interesting, there are 3 states that have passed laws making it illegal to force implants into people, on people, whatever, in them, to force them to get them. and that is Wisconsin, North Dakota, and good old California.
Well, it's strange you said Wisconsin because one of the companies that I was watching some things were was in Milwaukee.
Oh.
And so I wonder if it's because somebody already there has happened, which, you see that a lot in law in general. Unless something that applies, there's no need to, bring up the issue. That's one of the companies that seems to be making a lot of noise in this industry about doing that. Maybe that was part of that reason. So I could see that happening in California soon, too, because you got Silicon Valley and everybody. I'm amazed that there isn't somebody in Silicon Valley already doing some sort of crazy thing with implants or with their employees.
probably
like a
is.
Google type of thing.
I would probably say that places like YouTube and
I thought Google was the first
Google,
one.
places like that are
Well,
already
they can't force
implementing-
them, so obviously there's a law in place here to keep
True.
them, prevent them from forcing. But yeah, it's one of those things. Well, if you're not a game player, what are
Yeah.
you doing?
Exactly.
You might not be forced to make it, but
That's
you can
right.
be strongly encouraged.
That's right.
Right.
Well, there's the other fact is like, there's the commercial application and there's the consumer application. And you kind of need both of those to create that fad or that desire to be implemented
Yep.
with the technology. On the other side of the coin, if you're strongly against it, the problem is okay, you don't have to have that. But you know what you don't also have to have is access to this.
Yeah.
Because without that, you may not have access to this. Now, I'm not forcing you to access this, but if you would choose to,
Yeah, and if you
can't
can't
have to comply.
and if you can't access that, you also are not eligible for promotion because we can't promote anybody who's not in that.
Yeah.
You can't let anybody that
Can't be a
access.
level 2
That's
if you're not
right.
a level 3.
Resistance is futile.
That's it, dude. So they'll find a way, more than likely affecting your pocketbook or your reputation that will
It almost sounds like
convince
a
you.
tool that could be used in social credit.
Yeah, it would,
Oh,
100%.
absolutely.
100%. It's the
Absolutely.
It would be the wallet of social credit if that system ever is implemented 100%. But I wanted to touch on something you said. You brought up the hobbyists and like the home automation aspect. I mean, this goes beyond the home, right? This is like life automation. I'm walking up to my vehicle. My vehicle is going to start. It's going to get to the ambient temperature that I choose to drive in. It's going to be smart and memorize what's outside for me.
Or your hand's going to get there.
Yeah. Go walking into my house. I no longer need to punch a security code to get into my house. So my home automation is thus implemented. I mean, it's going to go well beyond your security of your dwelling.
My question here is, how much would it really take to read somebody's RFID signal, mimic that, and gain access to all their encrypted information?
It depends on how heavy the cipher is, the encryption bit rate is on the unit. Because, again, everything that we do anyway that is digital is encrypted. Wait, let me rephrase that. Everything that we do that is encrypted, so, your emails are supposed to be encrypted. Your passwords, if you go to if you're at a big website and you have a password, that's supposed to be encrypted. All of that stuff is encrypted with a level of encryption that is supposedly at whatever given time not been cracked or extremely difficult to crack or whatever. These things would be implemented very much the same. So, I mean, I don't think it would make you any less secure, and that's why I'm kind
However,
of like,
you wouldn't need to make physical contact with an individual to acquire whatever that
but you
signal
don't now.
is.
Yeah.
So that's my point.
Identity theft happens from people from continents away.
Yeah, and I mean, so it's like, and that's why I really one of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk about this topic too today was like, man, if we debunk some of these myths, that are out there about it, not that to promote it, but just so that people understand, this isn't any less safe than everything we already use every day. Like me paying with my phone.
You pay with your phone.
Well, I mean, okay, fine. But you're also carrying an iPhone too. I mean, so there's the tracking, there's the the listening. All that risk you're already taking.
Absolutely.
I mean, then as far as your credit card goes, I mean, dude, if they can get your social security number, or if they can get your or your credit card, if you bought something online, if they hack that website and they get pull that information, it's like there's nothing out there that people can't get if they really want to. Most of the time, nobody really cares to, but whatever. That's
It all goes back to the easy target system, right? I mean, if you're going to make yourself an easy target in any atmosphere, then you're going to be the one that's picked, right? So the technology will grow, and the security will grow with it. I think.
So there was a comment I wanted to touch on there. With Matt was talking about the home automation stuff again. The reason, okay, so that stuff I've looked into that stuff a lot. I have a full system at my house or whatever. And one of the things that I thought was really cool was rather than, let's say, when you get home, the idea behind home automation is you walk in, you hit your garage door open, your garage door opens up, and if it's nighttime, please turn on this light and adjust the heater to this temperature and maybe turn on the music to this song or this station that I like listening to, and I don't know, start the rice cooker or something. That kind of stuff automatically happens. It's that kind of stuff, and that's the kind of stuff you build with home automation. The trick is that what that works off of is that something or someone triggered the event in your home. So let's say, for example, that the garage door opening triggers all of these things. So the garage door opens and the system looks at the time and it's like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. Oh, that must be time to do all these things because you created this event that's supposed to occur. But what if it's 6 o'clock and it's your kid coming home? Well, it's not time.
Or you're not home at all.
Yeah, or you're not home at all, and it got triggered by some other reason or whatever. It doesn't matter. Maybe your husband came home, or your whatever, or the garage door opened randomly, which I guess could happen. It doesn't matter. Whatever the trigger is, it doesn't know that it's you and your preferences set that it's executing for that activity. And one of the nice things first things I looked into was it's a common implementation is people will that are into home automation will use their cell phones to create it's called a geofence. Mm-hmm. And you can basically, here's the problem with it. You're basically giving access to your location through your phone to a third-party entity, the one that runs or manages your home automation system. And that is tracking wherever you are in the country, in the world, whatever. Because it's the
qualifier for your if switch.
Yes, exactly. So when you come home and you open the garage door, it knows that it's you, because this entity is tracking wherever you are, and that's one way of knowing, hey, it's you that's home. With something like an RFID tag, it's not a globally tracked thing. You are not giving that first of all, it has no GPS. We'll get to that in a second, but it has no GPS, so it's just a near-field sensor that needs to be sensed. So basically within 6 feet, I don't know, when it gets better, it might be 12 feet, it might be 20 feet, whatever. You can probably adjust it when it gets to the point where it's really long. So when you come home with the RFID tag in you, it knows it's you and not your daughter or your son or whatever. And so all of these triggers that occur because you're the first one home, that they run because they actually knows it's you. So that's the tricky part. And the next level of advancement with home automation is knowing who is home, not just that something is triggering the trigger.
Well, I think what you're pointing out is it's not just the next step, it's the absolute step. Because without the RFID chipping in there, that step isn't going to be achieved. You could leave your cell phone in your car.
That's true.
Your daughter comes home, she dropped you off at the dentist or whatever it is. She comes home.
What happens if you forgot your phone at home all day? Yeah. Now the trigger's going to run at 6 o'clock and you're not home till 8.
It's the qualifier for your if switch. Yeah. So if your RFID tag is in you, you can't lose it. You can't drop it. It's there with you. It's self-identifying to you specifically.
Yep.
And then it acts as that same qualifier, but it's the one that can't be left or manipulated or stolen from you and then granted access to. So there is that aspect that the home automation won't get to that next level without that technology.
Yep, pretty much. And so I mentioned just a minute ago something else I wanted to talk a little bit about is that for future usages and implementations of this, the next big step is going to be to implement GPS into these implants. I think we're a long ways away from that because they're very, very tiny, and GPS needs power. It needs more space.
Well, it requires not necessarily. You've seen the little smart ID tags you put on your phone, your backpack, your laptop. It requires an outside network to network with
tiles.
Yeah, to geotag you. Yeah,
so but those have a battery internal, and when they die, you throw those things away.
Kinetic energy also can provide. If it's in their movement. There's technologies you could think
there is
about.
thermal conversion.
Just your heat itself, absolutely. 100%.
I don't think we're to that level in technology, but it's definitely possible.
One of the articles I read the other day about it was a gentleman talking about how do we. The hacking aspect was brought up. And one of the things they were talking about, how to keep this specific technology to you, is that it's not only just the RFID chip that's pushing out its individual signature, it's that your DNA is the signature itself. So your RFID chip is within your DNA is what is activating.
So your chip is tied to you,
literally
specifically, part of you.
So I can't take your chip out and be able to use it because it's the encryption for the chip itself is my DNA. So my DNA code is what's allowing my chip to broadcast.
So all I need to do is take the chip and a little bit of blood in a tube to use your chip.
That might work.
There's always going to be
they're just going to keep going hard, crazier and crazier.
When you were talking about the GPS not having energy to, I'm surprised there hasn't been a thought to use your body to energize.
I don't think
the
the technology to do that they're able to get small enough. Basically,
Okay.
these things right now, as far as I understand, that basically all they are is little antennas.
It's pretty much the same thing that they put in animals right now. It's almost
Absolutely.
exactly
Yes,
the
there you
same.
go.
Yeah, it's either something that disrupts a frequency code or something that completes one. That's how RFID works, right?
Yes, and
so
it's-
it's like when back in the '80s, you went to Tower Records and they had the first things you ever saw in front of the doors. If you walked
yeah.
out with a tape cassette, and this is how far old I am, it would activate the alarm, and
Yep.
that's all essentially it was doing. Those two panels across the door wanted a complete frequency.
Yeah,
they did not have one.
They create an EMF field that you walk into and
Exactly.
powers the antenna that's inside that thing. And then if it's the right matching frequency and it's not broken, that's why when they ran it over the magnetic thing, what that would do is create a stronger EMF field that actually broke the little teeny tiny wire that was the antenna, and it didn't work anymore. So these things don't have power until you walk into the EMF field. Now, obviously, that sensor field, the generator of that, has gotten smaller and more efficient and whatever. We don't need those. You don't need to install those stupid bars.
Yeah,
that
you
are-
hardly see those anymore. I mean,
No.
but they're still there.
Oh, yeah,
they're
they're
just
still-
built within the door casing now.
Yep. So now you can't lift your product up and over and walk out.
100%.
Not that I know anything about how that worked, but yes.
Mr. Retail.
Run.
Man, yeah. Yeah, and then back then people could chase you. Nowadays they're not allowed to. But
That's correct.
yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about health concerns, because I know that's going to be one of the first things, first obvious steps. Right? I was like, wait a minute, you want to stick this damn thing inside of me? You're going to give me cancer. All right. The big C word, right? That gets applied to everything.
Breathing inside of a city will give you cancer.
That's right. That's right. Sleeping next to your alarm clock could give you cancer, depending on what kind of alarm clock you've got.
Talking with your cell phone too close to your ear.
Yep, there you go. In fact, these microphones in front of us are probably giving us cancer right now.
Jesus.
So it's nice knowing you guys. There once was a big push that they had found evidence of tumors occurring in the area of implantation for microchips implanted into humans. However, that was squashed really early on, and apparently it was a stretch basically.
What was that? Early 2000s?
Something like that,
Late
yeah.
90s, early 2000s?
Yes, I think you're right, because FDA gave Verichip FDA approval in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was like 2002, something like that, where that was the big push was.
Yeah.
And they were pushing it out in the media. They were trying to do their fear mongering. They were scaring. There was like very, very inconclusive tests, and they just couldn't prove anything. So it kind of just went away. And then the other side of the same coin to that is, remember, we've been doing these implants in animals for freaking like decades now. I mean, it's to think that these things would cause cancer or make us sick. I mean, anything you put in your body can make you sick. The wine that you're going to drink or the food that you eat or whatever every day. But
Shit, drink enough water and it'll kill you.
dude, that trips me out like to no end. The fact that aren't we supposed to be like 95% water or some shit? And if I drink too much, it kills me. What kind of logic is that? What kind of flawed logic?
Too
is
much
that?
water. You're too much. You're no
too
longer
much-
you.
You're
just
too
water.
much of you, dude. You're too much of you, and now
Wait,
you're gonna
you're-
die.
No,
Your
that
body's-
5%, the 5% left over is you. And you have diluted you.
Diluted me, yes.
I think another thing is they're encased in glass. Have you seen them?
Yes, I have.
So they're encased in glass.
Yeah.
And as somebody who had a piece of glass stuck in their body for decades, I can tell you I felt no adverse effects from it. So
it doesn't decompose. It doesn't, unless it has something toxic around it,
correct.
or it's made. I don't even know.
It's not absorbing anything. It's
No.
not emitting anything. The glass is the reason they choose glass is for that prop.
I'm kind of curious as to how they actually encase it in glass.
That's a good question. I don't
That
know.
is very good.
Is the actual chip resistant to high temperature, or
I would think so, yes, but I don't know.
I don't know that you're ever going to achieve any temperature above 104 degrees, or you're probably
No.
gonna-
He's talking about, because remember, Glenn works
To
glass.
encase
So
it. Oh,
yeah,
He's
okay.
talking about to encase it, because it obviously takes high temperatures to close up the glass and seal it around the electronics that are inside of it. So he's wondering, if you cook the hell out of that glass, maybe they have another way of a glass that melts at a lower temperature and they don't have to cook it so bad. Maybe, again, like I was saying,
maybe the heating process to get the glass is what actually completes its process, because it's a silicate anyways, right? It's going to be some form of technology like a motherboard,
Yeah.
but way smaller, obviously.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's all made at once.
Yeah, I don't know, dude.
I
I
can't even speculate. I
The other
have
thing
zero
too is
idea.
I don't think I'll look at it and look into it later just because of my own curiosity. But I don't think that there's too much made publicly available about how they're making these things, right? Because it's probably still very proprietary technology and hush hush, because I don't know how. There's probably not that many manufacturers of this stuff.
I mean, I would
period.
hypothesize the glass encasement is not complete at one end. It would be inserted and then like a small dab of molten glass or whatever they use.
Yeah,
I just want to hug you right now.
because he used the term properly.
What
That's one
term?
of no. That's
Which
one of
term?
Hypothesis.
versus.
Theory.
That's one of his pet peeves. Awesome. Where did I leave off here? Oh yeah. Okay. So we talked about health concerns. Okay, other issues because there's a lot of them. One of the first things that pops up, and I saw a lot of articles on, is holy crap! Is NSA going to use this to spy on us and to track us?
Jesus
Of course
Christ.
so.
They're already looking at me. I don't know what to do.
Dude, they're watching you masturbate. It's
Well, it's a window.
I mean, yes, of course they are. Big Brother will always be there. Big Brother is there now. You're not escaping, and you're not going to beat them. So, are you giving them another avenue by which to track you? Probably.
Sure.
But they're gonna get it anyway. I don't know if you're worried about that. Well, stop buying the damn Echoes and the Google things and the whatever. You don't know who's listening on the other
Yes.
end of those, and it's just the same as all the rest of the crap that we relinquish, privacy that we relinquish.
Alexa is the NSA.
Yeah, along with Google and the
Siri.
HomePod and Siri. I mean, come on, people. Use your heads. If you're going to be worried about that, you already got a whole bunch. You carry around a microphone that is hackable, is accessible. As a matter of fact, that was a huge thing that's going on right now. It hasn't been completed. So, and I don't know if I have the details full. And by the time this airs, it probably won't even be a relative issue anymore. However, for the current, at this time of recording, version of iOS, users discovered that there was a security flaw, if you will, in the current version of iOS with respect to FaceTime, group FaceTime. So what they discovered was you could be in a group FaceTime. Now everybody's going to try this, but it's actually going to be buttoned up next week, so it won't be available. But nevertheless, you could start a group FaceTime, and then you could send the call to add another person. So I think you had to have two people going already. Send the call to add to the other person, and the microphone would kick on, and you could hear what that person was saying before they answered. The microphone, whatever audio the microphone was picking up, you could pick up. Now, that's just a flaw in iOS, right? But that kind of stuff can be initiated if they find a flaw that will let them, get in access. Otherwise, whatever, it can be done. And if it can be done, it will be done. But anyway, so Apple, was real slow to respond to that, and finally they've said, next week they're going to. So I think it took them like 2 or 3 weeks total to actually close up that flaw, which is a ridiculously dumb amount of time. They should have been on top of it, and they're being criticized vastly right now in the industry for taking way too long to take care of that problem, because that's really weird. I mean, that's literally, people could be listening to you. Your friends are. I mean, it had to be somebody who has your phone number, I guess.
Does it?
Well, we don't know how deep that. I've heard of other iOS flaws that have been extremely bad that they didn't tell us about, or other countries found out about, or whatever. And Android's got even more. So don't.
Yes, open source.
Yeah, don't think I'm picking on Apple for any reason. It's all technology. If it's a computer, it can be hacked. If it's electronic, it could be, like Matt said, if it's digital or analog, there's a way through it.
When I saw Steve Jobs with tape over the camera on his iPhone, I was like, okay.
And Zuckerberg, I've seen like that.
Exactly.
I've seen Elon Musk like
if
that.
the top people who are generating and creating this technology are also worried about its problems, then you
Then
probably
that means there's a problem,
yes,
for sure.
potential for problems.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing about we've talked about this before, the cell phone. It's a video camera and a microphone
Yeah.
in both directions.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean,
And
I'm
getting better every single iteration. I mean, better with picking up the sound, better with picking up video, better with all of it, and it's better at transmitting, better at processing it. I mean, yeah, they could be processing all kind. They have the processing power on board these things to be converting everything you say into text so that it's smaller, and then sending it off, remotely. You wouldn't even notice a dip in your Instagram posts, or your streaming of Spotify. I mean, you just wouldn't know. That's the thing.
What was
That's
the
the
movie
scary
where
part.
Samuel L. Jackson that created that everyone's getting the cell phones, but they all had like some tracking information? What the heck was that? It was
Which one? You're not thinking about the Batman where they were connected to sonar, right?
No. It was the one where he.
Samuel L. Jackson, I don't remember. I mean, his movies are so freaking weird.
What was the movie? The little English kid who was supposed to be like this, like James Bondish kind of character. He's like the new up and coming.
Oh yeah, I think
it was that. But that was the thing. Is that
It was an English movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
No, it's American hit. So it was a blockbuster hit. But
Yeah, but it's everybody's in it with an English accent except for Samuel L. Jackson.
yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about.
But I mean, the creation of technology for the purpose of deceiving the mass, not necessarily for the form of deception, but for the data mining, just at the simplest level. It's not just about metadata. Let's get actual data. Let's get actually what Ben said, when Ben said it, how he said it, all the time.
Yeah.
And if that was the initial goal when they wrought these technologies, it's such a hidden format, and you're so used to it now you can't remember the handspring visor.
Oh yeah.
Remember remember before that? Remember before it was your actual phone? You had a phone too, and your visor
and
it
my
was like-
PDA.
and then you didn't need it.
No.
You had no use for it whatsoever. It was useless.
I kept-
and then you
I
got
kept
it,
my schedule on it.
and then you
yeah.
acquired it, and then you could not live without it. You
Yeah.
had to have it.
That's how smartphones were too.
It's
if you
one of-
didn't have the PDAs first.
Yes, and the generation of such technologies with ill intentions, I think, is hyper ready. I think it's intentional. The intentions of some of these creations of our technology is to have access to us, and that we will run to give you our access.
Social media.
Well, yeah,
100%.
that's social media is what is training people to be okay and comfortable with that.
desensitizing us.
Absolutely, and we've already gone enough a generation into where people think this is the norm, and we've talked about that before. Once you get somebody inundated in something, by the time your kids come around, it's been there the whole time. They've been there, even if it's only been there 15 years. Now there's a whole generation of people who that way. I think there's going to be a comfortability way of introducing this with the RFID where, hey, you can unlock your door, you can start your car, you can go there. It makes it convenient, makes it convenient. But like we've mentioned before, as technology gets more advanced, they're going to start adding things to it. So I think there's an argument every direction, because the medical thing was the first thing I thought about, especially with elderly people or somebody who has dementia or something like that. Now they've got a chip. Let's say they get an ambulance comes because somebody's injured or something like that. They just scan it.
Yeah,
They
your
know
blood type is this.
type.
You're this.
Yeah.
You're allergic to this medication.
Yeah.
There's always evil never necessarily comes in the form of evil, right?
Right.
It's
It comes in the form of technology.
Yeah, sheep in wolf's clothing, right? So I think if your end game was to have this amount of control over a populace, how could you do that right away? You couldn't. I mean, there would be too much, backlash or resistance.
Unless they just didn't know it.
But if I give you something that's awesome and that you can use,
Like
and
social media.
100%. And now, if you don't have a social media account, you're an outcast. There's something wrong with you.
We've had that conversation before. It's like what it's the bad thing about this is it's becoming an issue where technology becomes the pop culture that if you're not a part of, you're just old or you're out of touch or you're stupid.
Okay, so let me add to that, because there's
So you don't have a choice to be in or out of it anymore.
There's definitely a social pressure. Then that will get people, motivate people to do things like this. But there's another thing. When social media was able to make the jump into becoming a medium or a method by which people make a living, that changed everything. Because now it's not just some stupid passive thing that I do to pass.
Not just a game
because I'm not
anymore.
being cool. It's not a game anymore. There are people who their entire business exists because of Instagram. I know several. I deal with.
Oh, yeah, I've got friends in the same boat.
There's a whole bunch of them. I mean, and it's everybody. It's not just weirdos either. It's not just random people. It's everybody from hairstylists to arts and crafts people to musicians to everything. Without that, they wouldn't exist. They'd be running some dead-end job.
I don't think that they wouldn't exist, because here's the way I look at it.
I mean, it's a little strong. You're right.
So like in the 90s when I was touring all the time, one of the promoting was, we always use the word grassroots promoting, and it was talking to people, going to places. I remember before local gigs spending a month canvassing 100-mile radius of wherever we were going to play to promote that.
That costs a lot of money.
It does cost money, but here's what I'm saying is, so people have always been doing those. This is just another way to do it, and it's a much easier way to reach a larger group of people. So I don't think, when making a statement, say, oh, these people wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that. I think they would exist, but they'd be in a different position. What social media, especially like Instagram, in that regard, I think it's made people. It's so much easier to find your niche audience, because no matter what you're doing, a product, a service, or whatever it is, you only have a niche audience no matter what you're doing, unless you're selling cigarettes or iPhones. You know what I mean? Then there's the masses. Yeah. But if you're doing something that's kind of odd or whatever, that's that. It's a cool way to find, if 100 million people can see it, all of a sudden now you only need 400 clients to be successful in your business. Now you can find those 400 because there's 2 in this country, and it's spread out. But when we go full circle back to integrating this into people's everyday lives, I think going back and using the terms like a medical situation, the easeability of entering your home, the home security things, I think these are all going to be selling points. But I think as we are progressing into a techno future, we also got to remember that there's also techno thieves and techno bad people that are smart computer kids in high school now that are going to figure out how to empty everybody at this table's bank account in half a second.
I think the thing that's going to lead this to the next level in the future. I mean, once things start moving, you can't stop momentum sometimes,
Absolutely.
right? I think when it changes drastically, and I'll use social media again, like you've talked about as a primary example, when it goes from a luxury to a necessity, it will just the steamroll event will be unstoppable.
And they will find a way to make implants, make money off, so people can make money off implants.
They
already have the bar
like a
nightclub
MySpace
thing.
when you were
Well, yeah,
MySpace.
that's
And you
what-
just wanted to show your friends how much beer you drank, or what girls you were hanging out with, or what you did to your truck, or blah blah blah.
Yep.
Promote your band, whatever. Same thing with Facebook, and I use Facebook as the bigger portion. When Facebook changed, I don't know if it changed or you just started to recognize it for what it really was, but when it went from I want to share my social experiences with you, Ben, because you are my friend, I want you to know about me, and then it changed to where it became the thing you went to find out about everything. I mean, Facebook was just a social, short, small circle of information that you chose to have access to. Now you have it to where most people actually get their news from social media. I mean, Dan Rathers is outdated. There's
I don't
people
watch
who
news.
there's people who have a far larger audience than any major cable network on their small blog.
Yep.
Because people go to social media for news
Yeah,
now.
there's a reason I don't have a Facebook account.
The RFID chipping will be the same. It'll start out as a luxury. It'll start out as a necessity if you want to advance your career, because this company requires you to have it so they know where you're at, when you're at, how you're at. It'll become a necessity when you need to get back into your house, but then it becomes the real necessity because now, interrupting news. It's going to come to you directly. Hey, let's get your RFID chip directly. Let me tell Ben something directly about where he's at. Ben, watch out. There's traffic. Ben, watch out. There's this. Hey, there's a hamburger joint. I mean, it's going to be.
And I think a perfect example of that is those the Alexas, the Echoes, the Google Homes, all those devices. If you would have said 20 years ago, yeah, we want to put a microphone in your home, people would be like, yeah, right, dude, you're tripping. I don't want that crap in my house. Now they're like, yay, I want it. They'll do the same thing with RFID.
Well, now
tags.
they've changed the identity. Now it's your buddy.
They'll find a way to make it your buddy with a tag in your.
Well, when it's just like you were
implant
talking about, the nightclub thing. I think that's a perfect way of selling it because all of a sudden now you're part of this exclusive.
On top of that, once all the
group.
famous people start doing it, all these
Absolutely.
people will line up to get an implant injected in them. For
Reminds
sure.
me of the movie Dogma.
I haven't seen that one.
Really?
Really? Oh my god.
Oh,
I'll add it to the
man.
list. Let me take a couple steps back real quick. I want to go
That was a
back
good one.
to
It was.
the NSA, government control spying, that kind of crap, because there was one thing I wanted to add that I had just recently read about that I thought was ridiculous. So this whole DNA sequencing thing that is getting overly popular in this country, I'm sure other countries as well, the Ancestry.com and the other one, the 123 or something like that, or
23andMe.
23andMe, thank you. That's not the 123. So anyway,
There's-
whatever.
That's probably there too.
So- yeah, for real.
You just bought that. We own stock in it now. Get it?
Yeah, I had just recently read that, okay, so as part of their user agreements, they say that, we won't sell the information to anyone else or we won't relinquish whatever. However, apparently there was some sort of a backdoor, if you will, and they are transferring this information to another company that the federal government has access to. And they're using it to, again, they're selling it to us as our buddies. They're catching criminals with DNA information.
Look how good it is.
Look
people.
how awesome it is.
Just like the war on drugs.
Go out there and give all of your information. Give your blood, give your DNA, and all of your families. Because when you give your DNA, you don't just give your DNA, you give your family's information away as well. And so now they have access to it. So they've already found a way to skirt around that. They're going to find a way to skirt around anything that's out there and available to them. So don't think you're getting past anything.
Yeah, that serial killer who was a former police officer, I think in Auburn, California.
Yeah, that
they
was
busted
true.
him in Citrus Heights.
Yeah, that was.
That was like what, I don't know, a year ago or
Yeah, that
2
was-
years ago at most.
I don't watch the news, so I don't hear
Well,
about
that had to do that. Street had to do
that's
with it.
a kid put in a 23andMe or Ancestry.com, wanted to learn about his history. And because he did so, the DNA that he provided them also showed that his father's DNA was the DNA of this rapist or whatever they hadn't been able to track down since the 70s.
Nuts.
So I mean, it's like you're giving out more information than you thought you were.
That's right. And how are you going to argue? What kind of person would argue that's a bad thing? Of course, that's a good thing, right? But however, when they start convincing everybody to turn all their information over, I'm surprised they haven't gotten your fingerprints. I guess they get them when you're a baby, but they change a little bit or something as you grow up or whatever. So I'm surprised that we don't go in and get re-fingerprinted for everything.
It's not mandatory.
Oh, yeah.
That's surprised it's not mandatory. Like, go get a driver's license.
You open up your iPhone with it. You don't think they share it? Like the 10-year challenge. Oh, the NSA sure thanks you for facial recognition, people. Let's share the 10-year challenge.
That's
how much
why
I
face
saw that
change.
one coming a mile
Yeah, that's why I
away.
still don't have a phone that'll do that. I don't like that crap, dude. Okay, other issues. Let's go back to our root topic here. There was another big one that popped up a lot that, the religious concerns behind this, right? Apparently, there are Bible passages
666.
Yeah, warning that these RFID tags are the mark of the beast.
Dude, they totally are.
On your forehead,
100%.
and your arm or something like that. So I went through and I read way more than I wanted to read. And there is not a single line that has any clear reference to anything related to this.
That's the entire Bible, Ben.
Yeah, I know. It's a stretch at even closest, and a twisting of words, like the rest of the
Complete description of the
disagree.
Bible.
All I can say is that there is a symbol of the apple on an apple, which is an apple with a bite taken out of it, which is a Garden of Eden reference, right?
Could be.
I take it that way.
Well, you
It's-
guys,
You can interpret things any way you like, but that doesn't mean that was the fact. That's my point. It's like, and reading all these Bible passages and
Don't shut me down, fascist.
No, I mean, I went through about 30 of them, and it was just like there's nothing here that says anything about putting anything into your body. They're saying, first of all, even if you believe in any of this stuff, if you do believe in that book, then what you're reading there says that things that bear this mark of this evil entity, and this is not a mark. It's not even the same thing. There's no way.
That's also self-interpretive as well, isn't it? Whether it is or is not a mark. I mean, I just have to say.
Now we go down the path of twisting everything.
How do you define a mark?
It's not defined. That's the problem. It's open to
I want
misinterpretation.
scientific proof.
Yeah.
I would disagree. I think you could say anything that was adjusted after formation, it's a mark. If there's a rock right there and I scratch the rock, that scratch is the mark, not the rock itself, not any dimple on the rock, but what I added to it after its completion. What I understand is
why aren't tattoos considered the mark of the beast?
I wouldn't disagree that they couldn't be.
No, they're not. They're not stated in there as the mark of the beast, but though they are stated, it is stated in
Leviticus, probably. Leviticus. That's Old Testament.
See, okay, we're not going to get in the religious debate thing.
I would take like the religious aspect out of it. Let's just imagine.
But it was a huge thing.
But let's imagine the Bible itself was not necessarily from the past, maybe from the future. Let's say it's some like technological manual, right?
Oh, fuck, man.
I don't want to get into the ancient. I don't want to get into ancient aliens. I'm not, Giorgio Tsakopoulos or whatever.
Aliens.
Yes, but it was aliens.
Aliens.
If you were to describe to somebody in a technological frame of reference that they could understand, you would say that this is a mark. And if you want to prescribe a specific design to it, then you can say the 666.
You know why you're going for a stretch here? Because the word mark is not what was written. It wasn't written in English. Not even close. So we don't know. You don't speak.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't speak Aramaic. Nobody can get the copies of the book in Aramaic. So nobody alive here in this country, for the most part.
There's actually more than just Aramaic. There was older languages, Sumerian,
that's right.
stuff like that.
And none of us speak those languages. Nobody knows
100%.
Nobody knows that the word mark was even what the translation meant. On top of that,
it specifically says the number of the beast, the mark.
No,
it specifically
we don't know
prescribes
what it
to that.
says. We don't know what it says.
I'm with Ben on this 100%.
Nobody knows what it says because you can't read the languages.
Okay,
and you can't even get the original text.
Back to the statement that
you can't get the original version.
If it was written in a technological frame of reference that you could absorb and understand.
That just throws the whole thing out.
Not with what I.
But that means that it would had to have been converted from one to another by a human.
So he's focusing on the English written approach.
I'm trying to steer away from it. Actually, I'm trying to steer. What I'm trying to do is steer away from that. What I'm saying is that there is a possibility that the technological frame of reference to the idea that something whether it's written, stamped, drawn, designed, burned, holographed, hologrammed, whatever it is, there's something that's prescribed to this specific feature is what will give you access. And if you don't have this specific feature, you are not granted access. And the access of which is granted and the marking of itself is the evil of whatever they're trying to prescribe the evil to.
Well, I'll give you the fact that it's an evilness.
No, I'll give you the fact that that's a
And the
possibility.
grandeur.
But at the same time, if you're going to recognize that as a possibility, you also have to simultaneously recognize that there is a possibility that it is all complete bullshit.
100%.
100% made up bullshit. I mean, just that's it.
I don't know. That's
So
I wouldn't say made up.
everything
I would say
is
maybe
made up bullshit
Yes.
because
Everything.
our brain
Everything.
generates
all
everything that
came-
we experience. It's all fabricated in our heads.
100%. If I spilt my soda on this table,
No, don't do that.
And the stain made a pattern, right? It's not going to be a square. It's not
It'll
going
be
to
the face of Jesus.
It's going to be something else.
He's going to see Jesus.
If every
isn't
single
he?
one of us wanted to look at it and say, "What do you think that looks like? What does it look
Rorschach,
most like to you?"
dude.
You and I are seeing the opposite directions of the table, so your perception of the object is obviously going to be different than mine, right? You might see a truck where I see something else. So I think there's the interpretation value is 100% man-made, right? A man wrote that book. A man said those words. A man said this, right? These are things that men have said. Men are liars. I lie. You lie. You're a liar.
No.
You know, it's just what it is.
You don't know that for sure.
However,
Are you lying to me?
It's the I
think I'm
want
being
to get
lied
off
to
your
right
religious
now.
aspect of it, but I think it's the interpretation
I
of
got
it.
you. I got you.
You know, when you see something, it's like you told me a joke. I told it to him. He
And
told
I didn't
to
think it was
Ben,
funny.
And every time someone else tells a joke, it's fucking 5 minutes longer.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, it's like the old lady walked in with
Like
a
the
bar.
old game phone, dude, where when you say all the
Right.
kids sitting and tell the
Yes.
secret, whisper the secret to each
Yeah.
other. By the time
it gets back to you, it's like, what? I didn't say
that
that.
is not at all what it was. Okay.
But back to the topic at hand here. One of the things I thought was interesting was, people are volunteering to do this thing now, just like the social credit thing.
Yeah.
Like in China, we've got in 2020, it's going to be a mandatory thing to be part of social credit.
Boom.
Well, if we're already entering a world where technology companies and stuff are starting to have a lot of power, a lot of pull, especially when you think about lobbying and things like that, even at a state level, community level, government, federal level, whatever. What if, and this is another what if thing as it changes, if all of a sudden we decide that every baby born not only has to have their fingerprints done, but they have to have an ID tag. It's a safe way to not lose your child. How many you can immediately start the argument of how many
that's
babies
where
have been
it'll start.
switched in the hospital.
That's where it's going to start.
Plenty of solid ways to sell this technology. That's for sure.
And that's what I think the scary part is. And I think that's what Glenn and I are kind of on the same boat on this one, because I don't necessarily feel like I want to be 100% a part of the techno future that's coming.
Absolutely
I
not.
wanna,
Don't worry.
I want to have my
you won't
option
be.
out.
You'll die out.
Yeah, I will die out. But the problem is that it's one of those things where, as we've talked about before, if you're not a part of it, you're not a worthy human. You might as well be homeless because you're not fitting into social status quo. And that's the part that really bothers me the most is we're starting to use these little tools like an iPhone. It's like if you don't have an iPhone now, what are you, some poor, there's all kinds of...
who doesn't have a smartphone? That's weird.
Some people
I'm
choose
about ready
not
to take
to.
mine out and shooting it.
Right? But some people choose not to.
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point where I'm almost ready to choose not to.
Well, it goes back to back into the social aspect. I mean, these are all social problems. They all have a social solution.
They've been sold to us
but
during our
socially-
pop culture existence. I
Yeah,
mean, look at
you're-
iPhones. Look at the identity of the Apple. I mean, that's cool and hip and modern, aren't you?
Well, it's the
I don't
same.
have
You know,
a funny
Ben was
hairdo.
talking about. You could share I used to pass a business card. Hey, here's my business card. Look how great it is. It's quality of paper and all the stuff I spent the
I'm with
ink
you.
to make it look so much more unique than your business card. Even if we have the same similar job title or function, right? I mean, here's my business card. It's better than yours. Therefore,
Reminds
I'm
me of
better than
American
you.
Psycho.
I'm
Remember
better
that?
than you.
Yes. It's bone color.
Nowadays, it's no longer even about your business card. It's what's your Facebook page? What's
Yeah.
your Instagram?
Yeah.
Let me get this. Let me get this form of technology, and it's kind of weird that you want that it's become the business card, because the business card was just this is all the information I want you to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was limited.
Have zero other information, but now it's like, you have 5 kids. You don't have any kids. Maybe
Yeah.
you won't work out in our company. It's like, why are you looking at my social life outside of business to qualify whether I can turn your widgets?
But I think that's
that would-
definitely going on, and
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it's
100%.
growing
Absolutely.
all the time.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
as an employer, I want my employees to have a wife, 3 kids, and a house mortgage.
Just
Yeah,
like me.
so they will
have-
be on work at Monday.
Exactly.
There you go,
I loved
people.
it when my sales guys would go out and buy like $100,000 cars. I'm like, you have a car payment now. Nice 740.
That's right. We'll
Sweet.
see you at work
We'll see
tomorrow.
you at work tomorrow.
For 12 hours.
Yes.
You fuck. All right.
Matt. Sheep.
We are running a little over time here, but I wanted to have our last topic here with a question here. Who is really benefiting from us, including you and them, whatever, having these implants? Who is really benefiting? What do you think?
For me, I think it's the same conversation of who's benefiting from collecting personal information and selling it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The help and hurt structure is like a coin. You know, it really depends upon who's looking at it when and why. But it's always going to be extremely helpful at first. It has to be. I mean, that's the way it's
That's
constructed.
the sales. That's the sales technique.
You know,
Well, it's not even the sales portion. It's the whole reason. It's the whole idea to generate this technology. Like, why would I
motivation to
imagine
get people
the
to do
motivate?
it.
100%.
It's a
It just
motivator.
seems like a simple. The sales point is a easy convenience.
You know what
And
this reminds?
I do not see a strong benefit from it.
You know what
It's
this
10
reminds me?
p.m. Do you know where your children are? Remember those commercials?
Oh, yeah, hell
You won't
yeah.
have that anymore, right?
Yeah. Do you know what this reminds me of is when Google first started, everything was free. I mean, they were in the media all the time about free email, free Office app, free this, free that. Everything they were doing was free. It was amazing. Like, how are they doing this? It's so free, and it's so liberating, and it makes my life so much better to use their stuff, and it's all free. What did we create by supporting this convenient, free entity? We created one of the biggest monsters that's ever
100%.
existed. And we're doing the same thing. And Amazon, the people are not stupid to this stuff. Apple is doing collecting information of any kind. It doesn't matter what. Is the biggest and greatest value a company can have today.
Corporations are replacing governments.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing with the information, right? But even if they do nothing with the information, the fact that they have it
And keep it.
yeah, and other entities recognize what that's worth, and they're like, "Holy crap! You have what are they 6 billion iPhones or some crap? 6 million iPhones a year or something like that." So I can't remember what the number is.
It's
Throw
a
that
huge
out.
number.
It's a huge number of iPhones that they sell every year, right? And that all those people are carrying around. You have all those people's information. That's insane. Google's got how many? Who knows how many millions of Gmail accounts? You have all those people's information. That's insane.
What I think about it too is the mesh technology, right? You see this technology in your own home, or you want it in your home. I'm gonna have all these Wi-Fi repeaters within my
I
house
do.
to create a mesh
I do.
environment. Well, before you had the capability of maybe adding 1 or 2 access points,
Yeah.
which weren't necessarily the same thing.
No.
They kind of delivered a similar desired outcome, but they weren't the same as what mesh technology is now.
Yeah.
With all of our phones, all of our iPhones, right?
yeah.
We are now one mesh technological network for anyone who's in charge
Yeah.
of this to look at.
Dude, let me add to that because I just heard about this recently. AT&T, Comcast, AT&T. I think it was AT&T. You go out and pay for your broadband internet from AT&T, right? They gave you this stupid little box, and that's your all-in-one unit. That's your TV, that's your router, that's your access point, that's your network switch. It's all in this one convenient box, right? And that's how you get your internet. They're doing this, and I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to talk about this, so I can't remember the terms. They're doing this setup where they share part of your bandwidth and set up a AT&T customer Wi-Fi repeater. So it's supposedly built into the unit, separate from your network. But what they're doing is they're advertising your hotspot. You've created a hotspot in your house or wherever you place a business that other AT&T customers can hop on because AT&T offers free Wi-Fi if you have this level of plan with them or whatever. That if you are near one of their AT&T hotspots, you can access the internet. Well, that hotspot is your router.
And the more and more of your neighbors that continue to buy that technology, the stronger the field of access to that is.
Yeah, so they can, with that, something like that, they can create a mesh network to blanket cities and neighborhoods and whatever.
But you know that brings up an interesting point too. Is how many different technologies like that are piggybacking on other things that we don't know about?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
and because they're
tons.
This is
private,
just a consumer stuff.
and because they're private entities, just like when we
Yes.
talked about private
What about
prisons,
military application for that
Oh,
aspect.
man.
yeah, they don't
Who
have to
knows?
share their information.
Yep.
So they don't have to share their day-to-day business or how they're doing things. There's a lot of things they don't have to show. That's one of the biggest fears I have, and I think that's one of the things that when we talk about those type of subjects, that's one of the reasons I'm kind of anti a lot of this technology because I think that we're being used we've already been used for our information. We're being used for things like piggybacking a signal so that AT&T can say they have free Wi-Fi anywhere you go.
Yeah, and by the way, they're not giving us any discount or paying us.
Oh,
for
no,
that,
they're not giving.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, of course not.
Yeah.
But they also use the data for their own purposes. Like, oh, hey, burger joint, there's X amount of people in this area. It would be.
But data is so valuable because the information that you can get from someone's Facebook account can be sold to 100 different entities. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it has a one price tag. It's not like, we have his social security number. That's worth $50. We have everything. We have your schedule. We have the codes to this or that. So now
from
your
8 million people.
From 8 million people. So now your information, there's so much of your information that they have, it's worth $50,000, $60,000. You're getting nothing for sharing it.
100%. And it's the demographics that they get from that is, using statistics is easy. You have X amount of things that you're going to generate your population with. This percentage has this much going on. So therefore, if I apply that same theory to a much larger scale.
Hypothesis.
No, that's theory. Hypothesis is when I would.
So I just like throwing the hypothesis in there.
They're able to determine statistically how people feel, act, and move based upon just doing a small model on a population. So with this mesh technology, they can say this is the moving population within this environment at any given time. So here's where you need to put. I remember when I used to go on the internet and you'd read ads. An ad would pop up. It'd be like some bull crap, whatever. Now I look at the internet. It's every shit I just looked at almost buying yesterday.
Yeah.
How come all the ads are the shit I want? It's like you're looking at me
listening.
specifically.
Yeah.
And they're like specific things. Like, dang, dude, that's like a one-off item. Like no one sells it, and I want it. And I looked at it yesterday, and now you're telling me buy this. I'm like,
yeah. If that entity pays for advertising on Facebook or whatever, they're going to say,
it's
hey,
insane
we'll
how
send that ad.
they're targeting you.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that I love sci-fi, just love it. It's amazing. I think it's the greatest genre of anything that we've ever seen, and it captivates how special human beings are. We can generate and create our future based upon our idea of it. When I was younger, because I'm old, the grocery store doors didn't open. Then Star Trek came out, and the damn door opened on the bridge. Now everywhere you go, the door's open, right? We can create our future based upon how we imagine it to be. I mean, no other thing.
Or are we confined by what we are imagining it to be for
That's
future?
true. But we are, if we are confined by our where we confound ourselves is huge.
Yeah.
Every time I watch a movie and I see these new technologies, I always go, wow, that's awesome. I'm glad I won't be here for that. Like the Minority Report cell phone in your eyeball. And remember when cell phones were huge and they got really tiny? Now they're back to getting, now they got screens, got to make them bigger.
Now it's like 7-inch display, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I got to be able to watch my TV program on my cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. So it's amazing to watch the future of technology on television or in movies, and then to experience it live later on in your life. And I think some of these things are awesome and scary. And the RFID portion, like I watched this show called Anon. It's a Netflix original. And I mean, obviously, there was a lot more technology involved in it because your brain was accessing this information on the fly, but it was there. I could see who you were, and you could see who I was and what I was about. Your social information was brought up every time you looked at something. I looked at this book; it told me where it was, where I could find it, how I could buy it. It was just too much information, and I'm just curious to obviously it's sci-fi
For now.
For now, but the amount of information that can be provided from this. Not just the fact that we call it either good for consumer use or bad for the government spying on you, just the amount of information alone is such an overload, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, why do you need to know so much? I don't even want to know anything.
Well, that's an argument we've had before. It's like, this overstimulating people is confusing them.
And the kids today.
And kids today have no idea what they want to do. And again, it's also how technologically integrated do we as humans need to be or want to be? Because knowing all these things, getting all these coupons, all this deal, that's amazing. You know what's also amazing? The sky.
Yeah. I have an app for that.
And clouds.
I have an app for that.
Waterfalls and grass.
When was the last time you actually looked at the stars?
Yeah. I got Skyview. You look at them all the time.
Have you tried PSVR or the Oculus Rift? I don't need to go outside anymore. I don't need to travel.
Another thing that technology has kind of hindered man. I think if you want to say that we were on an evolutionary track at some point in our history, whether we were, trilobites to human beings now, I think technology has hindered our ability to hit that next step in physical human evolution because we've garnered ourselves with so much technology that it's the technology that must evolve now and not us. I mean, we are no longer evolving species. We are not going to evolve.
We're making
Technology must
gadgets
evolve.
that do those things for
100%.
us.
So I think that, we're just going to be robots, dude. Don't worry about
And
it.
yeah, that's
Resistance
the
is
part.
futile.
That's the part I'm glad I won't be around for.
You will be assimilated. All right, guys, we've gone a little bit over, and I think we're going to cut it off here. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes. Or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.